Tonight we're going to talk about some of my favorite NES games, and my older brother and I got an NES with the 8-bit system when it was a couple years old. We could not really afford a new one, even though we had like Ataris and ColecoVisions and televisions and stuff like that, TI 99 4As. So the NES was probably one of the most popular systems, I guess, since the Commodore 64. And I didn't know a lot of people that had a Commodore 64, but I did know a lot of people that had an NES system. You know, just like there wasn't many people that I knew that had a Sega Master System. So, Sega Master, TurboGrafx 16, they're kind of in one league. And then the NES and stuff was in just, a whole nother league. But Adventures of Link was one of my favorite adventure RPGs. What's interesting is they changed it up. The graphical, the top perspective versus, a little bit different adventure and fighting style here. And the first one really isn't an RPG because it doesn't have levels, although you do get hearts, and kind of, it's more of an adventure. But I consider, the first one kind of, in the vein of an RPG. But part 2 definitely is an RPG, and they do have a gold box version, or a gold cart, and this gray cart. As far as how it aged, in comparison to the first one, I would say it hasn't really aged well. So if I started playing the games today, I would probably choose the original Zelda over the Adventures of Link. But back then, I liked that one better. And this is what a gold box Zelda looks like. This is the first one. If you're familiar with NES at all, you're probably going to be familiar with games like Contra and Super Mario Brothers, but also Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. A classic, obviously a boxing game, one of the most fun games on the NES, and there was also a version just called Punch-Out, which had a different final boss, And this one, you play Little Mac, and you fight Mike Tyson at the end, and he is very hard. Now, the next one here is one that I don't think a lot of people really like or appreciate. And when it came out, it was like a bargain bin game, at least locally. It was like a $15 or $20 game. The Guardian Legend. Well, this is such an awesome game. It's like a space shooter meets like a RPG. It had some, for me, it had some stellar graphics. It was challenging. It was an RPG adventure that I just loved. It's one of my favorite games. One of the few longer games that I probably played through over and over and over again. Probably at least 10 times. Then we have another adventure game that I have played over and over and over again, and you used to beat it over and over again. So, probably 5 to 10 times I played through this, when I got it many, many years ago. Goonies 2. There never was a Goonies 2 movie, but I don't know. Interestingly, the original Goonies was on an arcade NES release, but it never was released as a game in North America. But Goonies 2, an adventure game, you had to find all these hidden doorways and stuff, and find objects to be able to, maybe like goggles to do this, and a ladder to climb, and all kinds of stuff. It was just an amazing adventure. Here's one that also I do not think aged very well. Crystalis. This is an action RPG, And I'm not a huge fan of action RPGs, although I do like the East series, like East Book 1 and 2, and I've got like several of the East games on the PS4, like East Origins, and all kinds of stuff like that. I don't have every game. There were several made on the PSP that I missed out on, and I think East 3 on TurboGrafx. I think it was released maybe on Sega Genesis and stuff as well. But yeah, I used to play this one just similar to Goonies 2 and all. I played this one through probably about 3 times, all the way through, and it was just this was a game that one of my best friends also introduced me to, and he's passed on now, so it kind of makes it special in another way. Speaking of my friend that passed away, he also introduced me to Dragon Warrior 2. And this one doesn't always get the best reviews from people. You know, I haven't really played part 3 much and part 4 any. I played the heck out of part 1, beat it over and over and over again, and I really need to go through part 2 again and, you know, go all the way through it if I ever have time. Part 1 didn't have party members, so you were kind of like a fighter class, and I don't think you had spells or anything like that, so you had to use items. But once you get into this one, you ended up getting, I think, up to 4 people in your party, and it's just an awesome adventure. There are a lot of dungeons in here, if I remember right, where you could fall through the floors and stuff and have to like sort of restart and stuff like that. But so it was pretty challenging. Now, I played a lot of Super Mario, the original on the NES. And of course, it came with the system for most people. You know, Super Mario Duck Hunt. Then Super Mario 2 came out, and you know, I remember people like standing in line waiting, you know, at midnight releases and stuff of that. And, you know, stores like Toys R Us selling out. But I did not like part 2 at all. But guess what? Part 3 was awesome. This kind of, you know, the flying, gliding Mario, the adventure in this one, this was just preparing you for the next Super Mario Brothers on the Super Nintendo. So this is kind of the equivalent on the Nintendo of what they were evolving, I guess, into when the next Super Mario was to come out on the Super Nintendo system. Another game that is kind of given a lot of discredit or whatever is Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. Again, this is really what started the series moving toward becoming like an RPG type adventure. And you know, even though they kind of done away with this on part 3, Dracula's Curse, they kind of reintroduced it with Dracula X or Symphony of the Night on the PS1 and Saturn, and then all of the Nintendo DS versions were very RPG-ish. So I mean, to me this was a smart way of moving forward and evolving, but it must have got, you know, some bad press or something, this specific one, and they ended up going backwards and kind of going into the direction of the original for part 3. Lastly, I'll mention Willow. It's a very adventure RPG-ish game, and I like those styles of games on the NES, and even games like the first Metal Gear and stuff were pretty awesome. You know, I played through Metal Gear several times. I played through this game several times. If a game interests you enough to beat it and then play it, you know, 1 or 2 more times or more, right afterwards. And I call it a good quality game. And what's interesting about not this specific copy, but the first time I got this game, um, I bought it used in Tennessee, somewhere around Chattanooga, and the games in that area, and the flea markets and stuff, were like so much cheaper than what we could get games in Florida for. So they were like $5 a piece, and I was buying them all over the place. It was like Christmas. Oh my gosh! But you come here to the flea markets or used game shops or whatever, and they want 3 times, 4 times as much money for them. I should just throw this one in for good measure. Trojan, another game. You have to kind of learn the moves to be able to play it really well. But it is a game that I played over and over and over again and beat over and over and over again. I wouldn't call it my, favorite, but it's one I would say that it should be a must-have in everybody's collection. Just like, let's see, Contra. Some people consider that the hardest game ever made, but there are cheat codes. A lot of people love Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. And Ghost and Goblins seems like a must-have for many people's collections as well. Another game that, if it was more popular, I would say it would be a must-have, but it's kind of a niche RPG, very fast-paced, Destiny of the Emperor. You play like kind of in the Romance in the Three Kingdoms type characters. Some of the same generals and stuff are playing in this. It's definitely a different game. I'm kind of surprised it came out in the U.S., but I've played it at least twice. Going through the game all the way. One of my games I do not have is a baseball simulator called Baseball Stars. And if you're in any way interested in like baseball simulators or anything like that, it's like kind of like an RPG. You can have the games play on their own or whatever, I believe, and you build up your stats. You can make your own team, and it's definitely like for the time in the 8-bit era, it was an awesome game. Anyway, that's definitely a good start. And if you're planning to get into like NES games or collecting or wondering what you should maybe start with or look into to see if you like these types of games. All right. See you later.